Many countries have introduced laws to reduce the pollution caused by all these things, but it remains a serious problem. It damages the environment and harms people's health. This is why many people like to live and spend their leisure away from the city center.
'18. Hobbies. Before you read, 1. What are your hobbies? 2. Do you know anyone with an unusual hobby? Reading Passage 1. This passage tells you how some of the pupils in Miss Smith's class spend their free time. Miss Smith asked the pupils in her class about their hobbies. She was surprised by some of their answers. People usually expect girls to enjoy activities such as sewing or knitting. They expect boys to prefer things like model making or playing computer games. But Miss Smith's pupils are different. For example, Paul is very fond of embroidery, and Jane is in the middle of building a model boat. Some of the pupils said that their favorite hobby was reading. Others said that they would rather play games with their friends or family. Anna Lee and her friend Kate are keen chess players. They were taught by Anna's father, who was once a national champion. He has a special set of pieces that he carved himself from wood. Woodwork is one of his hobbies. Tom and his friends like outdoor activities. They go fishing together in the summer. In the winter, they play football. Tom is very good at this game. He would like to be a professional footballer when he grows up. Then, football will no longer be his hobby. It will be his job.
Reading Passage 2. This passage is about the different types of hobbies you can do. A hobby is something that you do for fun in your leisure. This is the spare time you have when you are not working or at school. Hobbies help you to pass the time in an enjoyable way, so they are sometimes called pastimes. There are many different types of hobbies. Some of them mainly involve using your brain, such as reading, solving puzzles, or writing poems. Others chiefly involve using your hands, such as painting, sewing, and cookery. Many people enjoy collecting things, such as coins or postage stamps from different countries. All the hobbies mentioned so far are activities that you usually do indoors on your own. However, there are many things that you do for fun outdoors, sometimes with other people. Popular outdoor activities include walking, cycling, fishing, horse riding, and all kinds of sports and games. Most of these hobbies exercise your body and keep you fit and healthy. Everyone should have a hobby of one sort or another. It is important to have some pleasure in your life. Even if you enjoy being at work or school, it is good to have something different to do in the evening or at the weekend.
'19. Information. Before you read, 1. Where do you usually find information for your homework? 2. How often do you go to the library? Reading Passage 1. This passage is about finding information in books. Our teacher told us to write an essay on global warming for our homework. She said that we must get all the information we needed from books. We must not use the internet. This pleased me, as we do not have a computer in our house. I wasn't sure what global warming meant, so the first thing I did was look up the phrase in a dictionary. Then I went to the library in search of other information about the subject. There are many different reference books there. I have an encyclopedia at home, but it's not really up to date, and its entries are quite short. In the library, there's an encyclopedia in 10 volumes. I took the volume containing the G entries from the shelf and soon found the entry I wanted. This gave me quite a lot of information, but not enough for my essay. I asked the librarian for advice. He showed me where to find the books on weather and climate. Most of them were written for people who already know a lot about the subject. However, there were a few that were easier to understand. I looked in the index of one of these and saw that it had several pages of information about global warming.
Reading Passage 2. This passage is about the Internet. The Internet can be a very useful source of information. There are websites that tell you about almost everything. You can find out simple facts, such as the capital of a country or the year when a famous person was born. You can also learn about more difficult things, such as science and medicine. However, you must use the Internet carefully. Some websites have incorrect information. This may be because there are mistakes that no one has noticed. It may be because the information was written by someone who does not know enough about the subject, or it may be because someone wanted to give people the wrong information. The best thing to do is to check the facts on several different websites. Then you can be more sure that you have the correct information. People use the Internet for many other things. They can look at train timetables or weather forecasts. They can book holidays or tickets to concerts. They can buy groceries, DVDs, electrical goods, or clothes. And of course, they can send emails to friends and relatives. Many schools and colleges have their own websites containing information about term dates, examination results, and special events. There are also websites called chat rooms where you can have a sort of conversation with another person who has the same interests as you. It is possible to make new friends all around the world on the Internet.
The family. Before you read. 1. When is your birthday? 2. Do you have any relatives whom you have never met? Reading Passage 1. This passage is about a family party. Kate had to make a decision. She had been invited to 2 different parties on the same day. One was the birthday party of her school friend Jane. The other was a party to celebrate her grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. Her grandmother told her, "I will not be offended if you decide to go to your friend's party. You'll probably have more fun there." However, Kate decided that her family was more important. She could talk to her school friends every day. But she did not see her relatives very often. In fact, she had never met some of them. For example, she had only seen photographs of her mother's brother Jack and his wife Alice. She had not even seen pictures of their children, her cousins Sam and Sally. Kate had a wonderful time at the party. She and Sally got on well together. Sally was 15, 2 years older than Kate, but they had a lot in common. Both liked the same kind of music, and both were keen swimmers. Sally told Kate that one of their ancestors, their great-great-uncle, was a swimming champion who had won an Olympic medal. At the end of the party, they exchanged email addresses so that they could keep in touch afterwards.
Reading Passage 2. This passage is about good and bad relationships between family members. There is a saying in English, blood is thicker than water. This means that people feel closer to their relatives than to their friends. They are more willing to help the members of their family in times of trouble. If they are in trouble themselves, they feel that their own family should offer them assistance. Is this really true? Most parents would do anything for their children when they are young. If they do not have much money, they buy things for their children instead of for themselves. Some say that they would die to save the life of a son or daughter. Grown-up children show their love and gratitude in various ways. Many take care of their elderly parents when they can no longer look after themselves. But what about sisters and brothers, or more distant relatives, such as cousins? Family members of the same generation often have very different personalities. Although they are of a similar age, they have little else in common. For this reason, they do not get on as well with each other as they do with their friends. Sometimes they argue over a small matter and do not speak to each other for many years. There is another English saying, "You can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family." This one is certainly true.
21. Transport. Before you read, 1. Have you ever traveled by plane? 2. What is your favorite means of transport? Reading Passage 1. This passage is about an unpleasant journey by air. Last year, I flew with my parents to visit my grandmother, who lives in the northern part of the country. It was my first journey by air, and it was not very pleasant. I have decided that planes are not my favorite means of transport. First of all, the flight was delayed. The delay was due to bad weather. We finally boarded the plane and it took off at 4 o'clock, 2 hours late. The seats were not at all comfortable. They were so close together that we could not stretch out our legs. There was a lot of turbulence during the flight. This caused some people to spill their drinks. The flight attendants were not at all friendly. The man sitting next to me said that he felt airsick, but the flight attendant did nothing to help him. I felt sorry for him because he looked very ill. The only in-flight entertainment was an old film. I didn't mind because I had a book to read, but I was still glad when the plane landed. When we went to collect our baggage, one of our suitcases was missing. I was very upset. Fortunately, it had not been sent to a different place. Another passenger had picked it up by mistake.
Reading Passage 2. This passage describes how people traveled around in the days when there were few means of transport. Hundreds of years ago, traveling on land was much slower and harder than it is today. Before engines were invented, vehicles with wheels were pulled by horses or other animals. People who lived then would be amazed to see our cars, buses, and trains. They would wonder what makes these vehicles move along. In those days, people did not travel long distances because there was no public transport system. Most people lived close enough to their place of work to go there on foot. If they had friends or relatives in distant places, they did not see them very often. Traveling overseas was also more difficult. The only means of crossing large areas of water was in a sailing ship driven by the wind. Journeys that we can now do by air in a few hours would have been long sea voyages then. Sailors had no electronic instruments to help them find their way. Some had a compass to tell them which was north, south, east, and west. Others used the position of the sun and stars to decide which way to go. Some people think that life was better in those days. There was no pollution from the fuel used by motor vehicles. People were fitter because they walked more. Children did not move far from home when they grew up. This meant that towns and villages were friendlier places where everyone knew each other.
Visiting other countries. Before you read. 1. Have you ever visited a different country? 2. Would you like to live in another country? Reading Passage 1. This passage is about a young man who is traveling around the world. Joe Wang loves to travel. He left home when he was 18 years old. Since then, he has never spent more than 6 months in any country. For the first 2 years, he traveled around the continent of Asia. Then he went to Europe, where he visited 10 different countries in 3 years. He is now in South America, traveling across Brazil. Sometimes Joe takes a job to earn money. He worked as a cleaner in a factory in India for a few months. When he was in Italy, he worked as a waiter in a restaurant. At other times, when he can afford it, he behaves as if he is on holiday. He goes to the coast and swims in the sea. Sometimes, he joins other tourists visiting the famous landmarks of a city. Joe makes friends in every new country that he visits. They sometimes invite him to stay with them. Then he does not have to pay for a room in a hostel. In return for their hospitality, he helps with any work that needs doing in the house, such as gardening or decorating. Joe will return to China to live when he has finished traveling, but he has many more countries to visit before then.
Reading Passage 2. This passage is Sally's conversation with her grandfather about traveling to foreign countries. Sally went to America on holiday last year. When she came home, she went to her grandfather's house to show him the photos she took in New York. "Have you ever been abroad?" Sally asked him. "No," he replied. "I have never wanted to visit foreign countries." "Why not?" she asked. "There are many reasons," he replied. "First of all, I would not like to go to a place where people speak a different language." "But you speak good English," Sally said. "You would have no difficulty understanding people in America, Australia, or Britain." "Secondly," said her grandfather, "I do not like eating foreign food. I know that there are Chinese restaurants in other countries, but the food they serve is not as good as the meals your grandmother cooks for me. Thirdly, there is the weather. I do not want to go anywhere that is too hot or too cold. I do not want to go to a rainy place where it is always wet. I prefer to take my holidays in my own country. I have lived in China for 70 years, and there are still many places that I have never visited. Why should I take a long journey by plane or ship to another country? I do not have to travel far from home to find something new and beautiful to look at.
'23. Foods and drinks. Before you read. 1. Have you ever cooked a meal? 2. Do you like eating chicken? Reading passage 1. This passage tells you how to cook a meal with children and vegetables. Here's a recipe for a tasty meal. You will need the following ingredients for 2 people. 2 chicken breasts with the skin and bones removed. Approximately 400 grams of raw vegetables, green pepper, carrot, onion, mushrooms, etc. 30 milliliters of oil. A teaspoon of sugar. Oil for frying. 30 milliliters of soy sauce. A teaspoon of chili powder. Mix the oil, soy sauce, sugar, and chili powder together in a bowl. Cut the chicken breasts into thin slices and add these to the mixture. Leave this to stand in a cool place while you prepare the vegetables. Remove the seeds from the pepper, peel the carrot and onion, and wipe any dirt from the mushrooms. Chop the vegetables into small pieces. Put some oil into a wok and heat it until it is very hot. Add the chicken and fry it for 3 minutes, stirring it all the time. Then add the chopped vegetables and stir-fry everything for another 5 minutes. Do not overcook the vegetables. They should be soft enough to eat, but still a bit crunchy. You can serve the chicken and vegetables with rice or pasta, or you can simply eat it on its own as a light and healthy meal.
Reading passage 2. This passage is about eating the right kinds of foods. You must have a balanced diet if you want to stay healthy. Having a balanced diet means eating many different kinds of foods that are good for you. We call these foods nutritious. This means that they contain things that your body needs to work properly. You can sometimes eat nice things that are rich and sweet, such as cakes and ice cream. However, these things can make you fat or sick, so you should not eat too much of them. Your body needs vitamins to keep it healthy. There are many different kinds of vitamins. They are named with letters of the alphabet, and they are found in different foods.